Hello and welcome to everyone. Today our guest is Rockstar Z. Well, Z, thank you so much for giving me a shot last time. And it was a big pleasure, It was a big pleasure to speak to someone. And right now, actually, there were many MMA fans, all around the globe and so, but you simply rock with this lovely sport. And how did everything start with the sport? How did you get into MMA? How did you get the passion for this sport?
I started I was always kind of a fan of martial arts and stuff like that, and like movies and whatnot. And I did a little bit of karate as a child, but basically when like YouTube started, one of the things I would search for first was like street fights and just to watch, random fights. So that led me to Kimbo Slice, and I saw some of his fights, and then I started just watching like highlight videos of UFC fighters like Thiago Alves and Anderson Silva and Vanderlei Silva, and yeah, kind of just spiraled from there. I got into it around I guess it would be like 2008, so right as like both Pride and UFC were merging. So when I got into the sport, I was able to kind of go back and watch all like the epic Pride fights and all the history of the sport. So that's kind of how I got into it.
That's really outstanding. And which was your first favorite martial art when you saw MMA for the first time? Did you have a favorite one, or you said, okay, everything is a mixture?
Well, yeah, definitely everything's a mixture, like for sure, But since I came from a karate background, I always liked the fighters who could close the gap and fight from the outside, like Machida and Wonder Boy. That style of being side on, and instead of engaging in the pocket, I always liked the guys who could utilize like the longer range and be able to get in and out.
Well, we pretty much like the same types of fighters. My original
Mm.
fighting style is Taekwondo. I later modified it, but I like to circle around and I like something, how do you call it, showtime kicks and very entertaining moves. When you started turning MMA into a passion, was it a hard road? Was it, did you have a hard time finding people understanding you? Were people watching you like you're having 12 heads or?
No, no, it was the total opposite. When I got into it, like everybody was a fan. Like it kind of blew up, at least here in Canada. We had George St. Pierre. We had again Anderson Silva. I had just gotten into it after guys like Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz were around. So like I wasn't around for their big moments, but everyone was kind of knew those names, and everyone was a fan of it as like this niche thing, like this new shiny thing. And then as the years go on, and as like everybody's favorite fighters begin to lose, right? Like no fighter goes on forever. So as fighters either retired or lost, a lot of people stopped being fans of the sport because they didn't have like a team to cheer for, so to speak. But I always just loved watching fights. I didn't really ever care who was involved. Like I said, I would search for just random street fights on YouTube and whatnot. So I just liked watching fights. And no, to answer your question, not at all. Like when I got into it, UFC parties were like a huge thing. So since there was only like a card maybe once a month, it was like a big event when the UFC was on, and we'd get pizza and beer and invite a bunch of people over, and it was like yeah, it was like a cause for celebration.
Yeah, it was great for you. Great for you. I had to hide for my first event, so yeah, we had a pretty much different path. How did you get into the world of MMA gambling?
How did I get into gambling? Yeah, I was just looking for something to bet on, to get into, and I figured since I was already a fan of the sport, why don't I try to apply betting to it instead of trying to learn a whole new thing. So yeah, that's just how just made a connection. And I was betting like very very casually for I want to say like a year, but it wasn't like consistent, or it wasn't you know, I wasn't doing tape study or anything like that. I would just see the fights on the card and throw a parlay together like a lottery ticket. So I started out doing that, and then I kind of got the sense that people can actually be serious about this and take it seriously, and make kind of try to make at least educated bets and make money long term. So that's when I focused more on that.
I know this might be a very hard historical question, but do you remember your first parlay?
Oh, it was something like I remember it had Rampage to beat John Jones. Like it was just such a flyer. It was something like $2 to win, a few thousand or whatever. But yeah, terrible bets.
So terrible bet, and it was a huge odd, or how did it start?
Yeah, I was like that. I was just throwing flyers because I didn't want to like bet each fight on the card or anything. I just wanted to like, put a parlay together so that, if that one time I hit the perfect card, this is gonna be like a lottery ticket. But that's not really a smart way to do it long term.
So how many perfect cards did you have throughout your life?
Well, I stopped doing the parlays like that. I've had a few that have been like, I'm sure you do. You have a few as well, I'm sure, where like some nights just everything lines up. No? You've never had a perfect card?
9 out of 10 is my record, believe it or not. I am always around 60-70%, average score is 66. But
That's
I
pretty
never
good.
say, this go judges scorecards, because majority of fans ask who's gonna win. I say, okay, you ask who's gonna win, fine. I pinpoint the finger, but that's basically it. I'm not like you're looking for some tiny stuff in betting. I'm looking tiny stuff in, in technical aspect. But in betting, for example, you say, for example, plus 1.5, I'm like, okay, but I'm not that deep into the world of MMA gambling. Do you have a favorite bet, for example, like do you bet on rounds? Do you bet on win? Do you bet on units?
So you mean just in general? Like what's my favorite type of bet?
Yes.
Probably the slight underdog range. Honestly, you get a lot of these spots around anywhere from even money to plus 186. And so for you, even money would be obviously risking 1 to win 1, right? Plus 186 is you're risking 1 to win 1.86 or 100 to win 186 or whatever, the ratio stays the same, right? And all the odds correspond with a percentage. So that percentage is how often you need to win a bet at those odds to break even. So for example, plus 186 is the 35% indication. So as long as you're hitting your those bets at that percentage, you're going to turn profit. And that's why it's a little bit different than predicting. Like when you asked me if I'd had a perfect card, I don't really make like full card predictions because I'm always looking at it from trying to find value, like trying to find when the odds are off. So I don't really predict the whole card. I'm just looking for those lines where the odds are off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
So a technical question related to betting. Now, for example, you say slight underdog. How do you determine who is, let's say, good slight underdog? Who is a slight underdog that has very great chances to win? For example, I only look technical aspect, and that's basically it. How do you do it?
All right. So if you were going to entertain betting, I would say you're looking for someone you're picking to win. You don't have to be extremely confident in them, but if they're the underdog, that means there's an edge. Because if you're picking someone to win, you're giving them a higher percentage to win than their opponent, right?
Yep.
Right. So if, let's say you give the percentage, you're like, I'm leaning this way, maybe it's 55%, maybe 60%, but on the other side, you see that the person is a plus 130 underdog. So that's, the bookie is indicating that they're going to win a little under 45%. So if you're saying 55 to 60 and the bookie is saying 45, that's an edge. And so that would warrant a bet. Even if your fighter goes out there and loses, at the end of the year, if the fighters you give 60% to actually do win at 60% and you're betting them as underdogs, you're going to turn a profit, right? That's why, again, predicting and betting is a little bit different because you might hit, like you said, 66% of your bets or your predictions, right? But if you bet $100 on all of those predictions, some of those fighters are going to be favorites and it's not going to pay you enough for when you lose one, win one, you're going to be down because if they're both favorites, you paid the price, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I kicked off with predicting because of the fans, I've always been behind the statement, I'm here for fans, I'm here for fighters, because I'm a fan, After all, at the first place, I'm a fan, then I'm a technical dude, then in the end, I'm a guy who stands behind his country, if you know what I mean.
For sure.
So, technically, Jimmy Flick, for example, against Durden, it was an entertaining odd because many people were thinking that Durden is going to win that fight, and Flick wasn't a big favorite. So I
Hmm.
assume this could be a good example of what you were talking previously.
Yeah, I mean, Durden was a popular dog pick, and I was tempted by him. Not because I was thinking he was gonna win the fight at a high clip, but I thought he would give a good account for himself. But since he was only a plus 130, I didn't bet it. I wanted at least plus 150. So that's where you can see like it doesn't always matter what you're picking, but it matters what the odds are on that fighter, you know? And then you're looking for that gap. That's basically in a nutshell the whole essence of betting, right? Because people will always come to me and say like, oh, how can you bet on fights? It's so unpredictable. How do you know who's going to win? And the simple answer is nobody ever knows who's going to win, Even as confident as anyone could be, it's never 100%, right? We've seen crazy things happen in the sport. So the whole point is just to be more accurate than the odds that you're betting on.
How hard it is to bet against the fighter from your state? For me, it's like 100% no. I can't do it.
It's not hard. It's not hard for me. No, it's not hard for me. I really don't think it plays too big a factor. Of course, I'm a fan of some Canadian fighters. Like I like Charles Jourdain. I like Hakeem Dawodu. Um, I did like TJ Laramie before he dropped the ball in his debut, but I still think he's got a bright future. Um, but in general, I'm not afraid to bet against a Canadian. Not at all.
Well, I didn't say I'm afraid to bet against a Bulgarian fighter, but I'm too patriotic, and I would simply stay away from that fight. That what
True.
uh,
Yeah.
that's what I would do, because in most cases, when I predict, I say okay, I say what I think. But for example, when I predict against a guy from my state, it's like too hard for me. For example, I don't know how you look in Canada about that.
But then if your guy goes out there and wins, you're gonna wish you had stuck to your guns, right?
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, and especially if your guy gets robbed, like Ivanov got robbed against Sakai about fence grab and such things, then you know how it goes.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, so before the event, how much time do you need to create a parlay? Before the event, like 1 hour, 2 hour, few days before the event. When do you
Oh,
create parlays?
I don't parlay too much anymore. I'm thinking about getting back into them for like, again, just like small bet lottery tickets, stuff like that. But honestly, it's much better long term to bet everything straight because the line either has value or it doesn't. And if it does, you should bet it. And if it doesn't, you shouldn't bet it. So parlays are where you put multiple fights or multiple outcomes together onto one ticket. So you need all of those things to hit in order to get paid. If even one of them loses, you lose the ticket. So to answer your question, I don't really parlay too much, but if you're just asking general bets, it really depends, man. Like sometimes I'll look into a fight and I might have some, preconceived notions that are quickly confirmed, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I thought it was. Let's move in on this. But other times, I'll look at a fight and I'll see one thing and then I look at the opponent and I see another thing, and before you know it, 3 or 4 hours went by where I've been watching all their fights multiple times and I've been, looking at their Instagrams and going over who these people are to try to just educate yourself on both sides so you kind of know where to set the line.
Have you ever made a straight bet, like you say, for example, 1 or 2 minutes before the start of the fight?
Back in the day, I remember when I was doing parlays, I had a parlay with, it was the night that Rumble fought Bader, and I think my parlay was Randy Brown and Sage Northcutt and Rumble. And so Randy Brown, if I remember it correctly, Randy Brown won and then Sage lost, and so my parlay was dead. But then I knew Rumble would win that fight, so I just put a big bet on Rumble to break me even for the night. Or there
So,
was another one I bet very close to the fight. It was Michelle Watterson to win by submission over I believe it Paige Van Zant, I think.
which was the riskiest bet you've ever made? Do you remember that?
The riskiest? Or
Yes.
like define that. Like the one with the lowest chance to win or the most money on the line?
Both?
Both. I think I've had three bets with 400 on it, and the first two were on Dan Hooker when I bet Dan to beat Ross Pearson, and I bet Dan to beat Gilbert Burns, which in hindsight, I don't know if I'd make that bet again, especially the way Burns has looked now. But at the time, I really thought he was going to win. So those two were good. But then this year I had a $400 bet on Wellington Turnman, which blew up in my face. I did not expect him to get knocked out by Andrew Sanchez. And sometimes that's the thing, right? Like you can see a fight going one way and you're like, all right, if it goes this way, it's going to be good for my guy. But sometimes things happen that are just so out of left field, it's hard to look back at that and say, oh, like I should have known that was going to happen, right? But as far as the riskiest bet, that's really hard to put my finger on, honestly. Probably the Brazilian banger parlay, where I had a crazy. It was a 3-leg parlay with. It didn't hit. It completely blew up. But it was Arroyo to win by knockout, Aldo to win by knockout, and Moraes to win by knockout. And that one was I think $50 to win like over 10,000, but it didn't hit.
All right. Let me pinpoint to a situation. You placed your money on your fighter. Your fighter is fighting. How do you feel during the fight as a guy who put money on the guy who fights? How do you feel? I mean, what is happening? Are you nervous? Are you relaxed? Are you, mentally?
It's exciting, but I mean, it all depends on how the fight's going down, right? Like if the fight's playing out as I thought, then it's all well and good. But if it's going wrong, you kind of just go, you lost this one, I've been doing this like, I think coming on 6 years now. So like you just kind of learn how to roll with the punches, right? Sometimes I'll have friends over and they'll get like more excited about my money than me, right? Like they're all, they're either excited when I win or down when I lose, but you try to keep an even keel because, there's ups and downs in this game.
So when your fighter is losing, are you smashing stuff or you're like, all right, I lost?
I give up easy. I give up easy. I'm like, oh, it's done. And then if he makes a comeback, it's a nice surprise, right? But if he's getting whooped, I'm just like, all right, this is over.
I know many cases where people or smash things or do. I mean, listen, there are many gamblers in my state. Not a lot MMA gamblers. I don't know much of them. But soccer gamblers, every second guy, believe me, every second guy is a soccer gambler. And I know how things work here. And they are so nervous. They are always frustrated. Luckily, I live alone. But the guy above me and the guy under me, they are huge bettors when it comes to soccer. And I always know when they yell what's going on.
Yeah, I might have woken up a few neighbors once or twice.
So you did.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get excited, especially if a big bet wins or if it's a big payout. Yeah, you go nuts, man. It definitely adds some flavor to it, but at the end of the day, you gotta try to keep an even keel.
Yeah, you need to. I remember that I only woke up my neighbors only once when Ivanov defeated Rothwell.
Oh, yeah? Because you were surprised at the decision, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was thinking Ivanov is going to lose. And then they said one said for Rothwell and two said for Ivanov. I was like, what? Yeah, I was pretty much surprised about that. But so in general, how many people in Canada are into MMA gambling? Like percentage, 4, 5, 2?
To be honest, I have no clue. I mean, we have a good situation here in Canada for online gambling. There's some new legislation coming down the pipe, so it's going to be interesting to see how that changes the landscape. But I don't know. Like I said earlier, like during what I consider the golden age of MMA, where it was like just around UFC 100, where you had a lot of big stars, and every card had some of those stars. The Canadian MMA fan base was huge. But since GSP left, and again, since a lot of these popular fighters began to lose, a lot of the fan base dropped off. There's a lot of people that I run into that just say like, oh, I was a fan of it, but now I don't watch it anymore. Like there's too many cards. I can't follow it. So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I think generally it's like people were fans of fighters more than they were fans of fighting. Whereas I've always been a fan of fighting. Like I could watch two random people on the street fight and I would be entertained, right? So for me, it was just like I liked watching fights. Whereas with other people, I think they got attached to a fighter the same way, you get attached to a sports team, and it can be a generational thing, right? Where, the grandfather was a fan of this sports team, the person was, their son was. Whereas with fighting, you can't do that because we all know there's trajectory in fighters' careers where they have a rise and then eventually everyone succumbs to Father Time.
I appreciate one thing when it comes to Canadian MMA fans. I have like 5-10 Canadians who follow me very much often. And we had one local tournament, it's called Armageddon, but it's a local tournament, local MMA tournament, young stars and such. And I had to cover it in my native language. And I said, listen, guys, my boss demanded to cover in my native language. Do you want to watch it or not? They said, okay, we can watch. And there were two totally random fighters. For example, for Canada, these were Serbian against Croatians, and it were random fighters. And you know what they said? They said, hey, these are two random guys fighting, but this is better fight than UFC. And people were very much thrilled. So is it normal in Canada, like watching two random people fighting and enjoying, or they are like more, GSP and...
I don't know, man. I mean, again, it's like if you're in Canada now and you've been a fan of MMA for a long time, you're probably very hardcore because a lot of the like more casual audience fell off. You know what I mean? And I guess like a lot of people come from a hockey background, so there's fights in hockey too. So it's kind of maybe it's a bit more normal. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I enjoyed it pretty much when that fight happened. Then I later had an interview with the guy who won, and he watched my stream later. He watched, and he said, hey, why are Canadians chanting for me? Why are they yelling for me? I said, because I said you are good. And he says, hey, that's not normal here. Like he said, in Serbia, fighters chant for the fighter, For example, if they have awesome fight, and they don't know the guys, they're like, we don't care, and that's not me, I can enjoy. But he was surprised. I said, why are you surprised? Their culture is different. And people are having a very hard time understanding that here.
Yeah, I mean, we're known to be polite, right? I gotta try to keep that going.
Yeah, for example, here, when Rakic fights, everybody are like, oh, he's gonna win. And I can bet that 95% of them know literally nothing about MMA. For example, you ask them what is North-South, they're not going to know. They're only because of Rakic. But I've seen that many Canadian guys, and which was I thrilled about, they're like, they know a lot, which is awesome. And they can watch random fighters. So it's like a culture, it's a cult, or how do you describe that?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, but it's generally great. So what do you plan with your betting in the future? Because I've seen your channel is growing. I've seen you're uploading very much high quality predictions with a lot of details. All right, I'm focusing more on technical details and such things, but you are really focusing on gambling part. So what do you plan in the future?
Well, my results in 2020 weren't good, so there's that. But I've kind of developed a channel where I'd like to be more of a hub for it, where other gamblers can come on and discuss. And like I do the Fair Play podcast on the Fridays before the fights, so we get to take a look at everything after the weigh-ins, and I have 3 guest gamblers come on. But the best part about that podcast is when we disagree and we get a good debate going. So now what I've started is I want to do, I don't know exactly what I'm going to call it yet, but like just a debate show. So I'll look for 2 gamblers who are on opposite sides, and then I'll be able to moderate them. Or if someone's against the bet that I'm on, I'll invite them on and we can debate it out. So we can, argue it from a gambler's standpoint. So it'll be more than just saying, oh, this guy's going to win or that guy's going to win. It's like, no, why did you set this person's percentage at what you did, and why did you bet the line that you did for how much you did, right? So it's going to be a nice, I think it'll be nice for maybe more casual gamblers to get an insight into some sharp people and how they break down fights. Even though right now I'm not one of them, my results aren't that great, but I am in contact with a lot of people who are winning long term and sharp and provide good arguments, and yeah, that should be a lot of fun. So that's something that I've got going in 2021. I've also started a scholarship. So if you want to sign up for that and just pledge a minimum of $5 a month, that money is going to be collected and then it's going to go to paying for fighters' equipment or training fees or sending them to gyms, to have like a mini training camp. Like you can send somebody to Tiger Muay Thai, or you could send somebody to American Top Team for a few months and have them get good training. So I just think it'd be kind of cool if I could get that going, and I think it would be cool all around.
You mentioned your promotion. We discussed about that during COVID pandemics, and how would be a rule change in your promotion? Because you were having some kind of a different rule set, and it was kind of good for me, For example, when a grappler drags you to the ground and the round ends, the round should continue off the bottom, not in the stand-up, but like in the bottom.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't have a promotion. I was just talking like ideas for things, right?
Yeah,
but
about ideas.
that is one thing I was talking to my girl a little while ago about that. It's just weird how if you're a grappler, if me and you are fighting, right, and you're the grappler, and for the first 3 minutes we're on the feet, but then you take me down with 2 minutes to go, and then you've worked your way to the back, you have the rear naked choke, and then the round ends and I get to escape for free. It seems very, very bizarre to me because it's like you put in so much work to get to that position, and then you've put yourself in a position where you're going to win the fight maybe 90%. If you have my back, if you're locking in, and maybe I'm going to escape, but the odds are very much in your favor. If the round ends, I get to escape for free, and it's kind of like, why? Why do I get that reset? You know what I mean? And if you follow it back, why are there rounds in MMA? Because the UFC started with no rounds and no time limits, as I'm sure you know. But time limits I understand, because for viewing you can't have a fight go 2 hours, and they get exhausted, right? So time limits are okay, but the round really breaks up the fight, and I don't really like it. So I would prefer no rounds and to just have either a 10-minute fight or a 15-minute fight or a 25-minute title fight. But if you are going to have rounds, I just think it's a good idea to resume the fight in the position that the last round ended, so it doesn't completely take away the advantage of the grappler.
What about the level of inactivity? For example, Kamaru Usman could go cage control all day long. For example, my only rule change would be, all right, cage control for 15 seconds, no action, break.
I really like the way the Thai refs understand the clinch. Like they can see when there's action in the clinch and when they're moving and fighting and when it's just stagnant, right? Yes. I do understand stagnation, because stagnation is using the time limit, right? If there's no time limit, there's no reason to be stagnant. You have to try to finish the opponent, right? And that should be the goal of the fight, is to go for the finish. Like the judges are just there in case no finish materializes. So I understand breaking them if it's very stagnant, but you need an educated referee in there, because I don't like how some refs will break them up quick. Some refs will, will clap and like get them to stand up quickly, and then other refs will just let somebody ride out a position for the whole round. I really don't like the inconsistency that you see from ref to ref. And it's also very annoying because, like, let's say someone gets on top and they've spent a lot of energy to get the fight to that position, and then the ref is calling for action, and then instead of them maybe taking a short break to recover on top, they start working because they don't want to lose the position, but then they tire themselves out, and as soon as they stop working, the ref's going to stand them up anyway. So I don't like how the referee interference messes with the fighter's energy expenditure, but I do understand the necessity for some separations.
Yeah, I understand it too. I back that idea up all day long. I am not a fan, for example, riding someone for like 4 or 5 minutes if there is no action, but I would let the fight go as long as I see action. If I don't see action, one warning. If I don't see action again, I would stand them up.
And another thing is sometimes it's a stagnant position, but it's a teetering position where, like, it's very close to somebody passing guard, but they're stuck. you can't stand them up there because it's like we don't know where this position will end up. We have to watch it, you know. So that's another thing that really frustrates me when it's not a clear-cut position and the ref decides to stand them up. It's like, no, you have to see how that plays out, right? But going back to your cage control and the clinch, yeah, I just think there needs to be action because I understand, like, if you're just pushing someone up against the fence, you're basically saying, I'm going to stop you from hurting me until the time runs out and I will win. And I don't like that because they're using the rule set. They're weaponizing the rule set, you know, which I don't like. I would rather, yeah, I just don't like that. I'd rather, this is a fight. Let's see who's going to finish the other guy. But I understand that ultimately we need a time limit because it could go on forever.
Yeah, it could definitely go forever. And for example, the best matches are when the referee understands clinching and when the referee understands grappling. But considering the fact that majority of referees, sorry to say, have never stepped inside the octagon or ate a big punch to the face, you know how it goes. Same like with MMA media, for example. You have a guy like me who understands technical part. And you have some stupid guy who thinks he is a god, but he knows nothing unless writing or asking random questions, which his boss said. And you have a big mismatch, if you know what I mean. In my state, we call it a big mismatch. For example, you have a guy with a lot of knowledge, and you have a guy with very little knowledge who follows some stupid guidelines, but if you start asking him random questions, he's not gonna know. He will know nothing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I always try to be really respectful, you know, because I really do respect people for stepping in there. Like it's, I've trained enough to know how bad I would do against even people in the gym, you know, let alone a professional fighter, let alone a UFC fighter. So I always try to like preface everything with that. But at the end of the day, I am putting my money behind these bets, right? So if I say someone's going to lose and I don't think they're a good fighter and I'm betting against them, that person has the opportunity to win their fight and give the bookie some of my money. So I feel like there might be some disrespect from gamblers, but at the same time, we are invested, you know. So it goes a little bit more than just somebody writing and saying like, oh, you know, whatever.
Well, you know, I'm also a very respectful guy, as well as you have probably seen. It's very easy to troll someone, you know. It's not hard, like trolling, but, you know, I know what is the fighter going through because in my life, not gonna lie, I ate over 1 million punches to the face, so I know how it looks like. And it's not a big deal, but random people can't understand it, and that's the problem, you know. People who were spending some time in the ring, they know how it is. But people who have never fought before, well, that's a big problem. They don't understand how it works.
And this is why I can't watch. I stopped going to bars. Like when the UFC was really big, there were many. There was one chain here called Boston Pizza that would show every UFC pay-per-view, and it was like a big event. Like big crowds would go, but the things you hear when you're in that environment watching the fights, it's like I couldn't take it. You know, these people, some of the casual people, they think these fighters just walked in, you know what I mean? Like they just signed up last week and walked in, and like I'm sure you know, like when you sign a fight contract, every second of your life you're thinking like, oh, am I doing everything possible? Is that person, you know, are they doing more work than me? You know, it's a completely different level of like just the way you live your life, you know, because you have that date. And a lot of fighters, they don't like questions like, oh, if you get past this, then what? It's like, no, I'm just focused on this date because I need to squeeze everything out of every day to be fully prepared for this fight. And you're doing that against someone else who's doing that as well. You know, it's so different than getting into a random fight on the street versus another unprepared person. Like these fighters are going in there versus another person who's been preparing to fight. You know, and that's a huge thing. But just the lifestyle of like living your life one fight contract at a time, I think a lot of people miss out on what that means.
Well, you know, I was having a very funny situation a few days ago because we were having some protests in our state because some things are, you know, we are fighting for something, but never mind. But I had a guy who created 10 fake profiles to troll me. And I blocked him everywhere, but he was very persistent. And then he started, we were wearing masks, you know. And then the same guy starts to pull me out like, let's go here, and I just do this. Do you remember me? And he was like, and
You
the
saw him
famous
in real
internet
life,
troll, he
right?
started shaking. And I said, all right, what's gonna happen now? And the other guy was holding me. He said, no, please, not now, it's not the time. I said, come on, are you gonna troll me now or what? And that's how random people are, He started shaking when he saw me in real life.
So this was the guy. How do you know that was the guy that was making the fake profiles? You knew who was making the profile?
Yes, I knew because a
I see.
friend of mine had some contacts with other
I
guys,
see.
and he found out that's him. I knew one profile, and it was very much similar writing style. And then he asked a few other guys, and they confirmed he was doing that. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, I even forget about that. But you know how our paths were literally weird. It was so weird, man. We were in the same place at some random time, and he was trying to pull me out like, let's join the crowd. And I recognized him. I just dropped the mask. I said,
Mm.
what's going to happen now? And he started
Mm.
running.
In my experience, if somebody is talking like they're gonna fight you, it never happens. It's always like fights happen at the drop of a hat. Like it'll just pop off. It's not gonna be, in my experience at least, it's never been like a prepared thing. Like, oh, I'm mad at you, I'm gonna fight you tomorrow. I'm like, okay, and then it just doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, definitely. But it was funny, because
For sure.
internet trolls usually don't understand how real fighting works, and that's the problem. No, that's why I don't like to troll anybody online. I mean, why would I troll a fighter when a fighter is literally dying in the gym? It makes no sense to me.
No, it's a very yeah, it's a very strange thing.
Yeah,
It's the anonymity, being anonymous online. It allows people to kind of show their real colors.
yeah, I know, but doing this kind of simply not my style. So in the future, you plan to support many fighters with your scholarship, or
Hopefully, I mean, you never know where these things will go, right? But I just think it's a cool idea to kind of, crowdfund in a sense, fighters. Like I think about that, right? Like if someone's out there who's very dedicated at like a young age, like 18 or 19, and is training and focused, I just imagine like how much even a simple gift of like some training equipment, or not just equipment, but like I'm imagining like sending them a heavy bag, for their garage or something like that could make a big difference in somebody, especially if they're, working a job and paying for gym fees and training. And, it's, there's thin margins, a lot of fighters don't make money for a long, long time. So I just think if I could find somebody who's really driven and give them a little help, I mean, that would be amazing, and it's just utilizing this crazy technology. Like you and I are sitting here again having a chat, like face to face, essentially, when you're around the other side of the world, and technology is just so crazy right now that I figure why not, why not give it a shot?
well, if you're interested, sometimes I don't know. I can recommend one fighter from Serbia if it ever comes to fruition. But he is 19 and he is the greatest Serbian prospect. So if you're ever interested, I mean, I can send you the link or whatever you want, whatever you need.
Sure, sure. I mean, I'll be looking for fighters. I think that'll be a fun part of the process is fighters applying. Right now, the fund is there's not a lot of money. I just started it last month, and we only have a few people on the Patreon. But if it grows and the savings grow too, I mean, there's gonna be money up for grabs. And these fighters could apply and they can request for whatever they need if they want. Like I said, equipment like kettlebells, ropes, weights, stuff like that, or if they want heavy bags, if they want whatever, if they want their gym fees paid for a year, if someone wants their jiu-jitsu membership paid for a year, they can apply for that. Like I just think it would be really cool, and the application process will be really cool. Once the fund grows to something worthwhile, I think it'll be cool to see fighters apply and like tell me why they want it, what they're doing currently, what their accomplishments are. Did they wrestle or are they brown belt in jiu-jitsu, whatever the case may be. It's gonna be really, really fun to kind of go through and pick out some people who are worthy of a help up, step up.
No problem. I'm gonna send you his link. So You're
for sure.
you're gonna decide which way this is gonna go. And this would be the last question. Considering your channel is more gambling oriented and mine is more strict predictions, what was your goal when we were having interview? Was it about to hear the different part of the story, the different part of the world, or?
No, I just I mean, I've hopped in your live chat a few times and commented and just chatted, and it was just, honestly, it was kind of a spur of the moment thing. I know you're a super fan, and I thought, hey, why not just get him on stream and just have a conversation? And it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, because I'm usually talking to other gamblers, and I just thought, why not,
Well, I got to say thanks because it meant a lot to me, because here where I live, people literally hate me because of what I do. They're pretty much narrow-minded, In Bulgaria it's different. In Bulgaria people bow and respect, but here it's terrible. Believe me, it's very terrible here.
It feels like Serbia is there's good fighters coming from Serbia though, and that's where you're at right now. So why are people, they're so against it? Why?
Well, people are so against me because of this, you see? Because I represent different states, and they don't get that I respect both Serbia and Bulgaria. I respect every single Serbian fighter. Serbia has awesome fighters, but people here are very much narrow-minded,
This is one of the biggest problems in the world right now, is this group identity for so many things. It's for gender, it's for sexual orientation, it's for countries. We should not be attached to these things. We're all just people, we're all people. Just because someone else is a Canadian doesn't mean I'm going to be more friendly with him than I am with you. It depends on the person, the individual person,
No, I understand it. For example, if I've ever watched it, I would have never recommended you this guy. I mean, I don't care because he's a Serbian fighter. I think he is really good. I mean, I'll send you a video and you'll see that he is really good.
Right. And even like as a fan, as a gambler, I'm not afraid to bet against a Canadian. And by the same token, I'm not, if someone's from Russia, I'm a fan of many Russian fighters. To me, it has nothing to do with country allegiance or anything like that. It's that to me is a very, very strange idea. And maybe it's different because, in Canada, we're kind of a collection of people. There's the original like English and French settlers and the native population, the Aboriginal, the First Nations, I should say. And we kind of formed Canada as came together, right? Whereas maybe over there, it's more going back to the feudal system where there was different kingdoms, and maybe that's kind of, bled down through the generations. Like you have maybe a bit more, not you, but maybe people have more of a sense of pride in their country against other, you know what I mean? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it. I mean, all right, online, I'm a proud Bulgarian, but I respect every single country. I literally respect every single country, every single fighter, so why does it have? It's not matter to me at all.
Yeah. To me, fighting is one of the best. It's the best form of sport because you don't need to know the rules per se. And some sports like hockey is big here. Maybe it's not going to be big in Jamaica, right? But if two people are fighting, it doesn't matter. Like none of that goes well. Like that fighting goes way past rules or what people like or what type of sports they like. There's American football is popular in America, and then cricket's popular over in other parts of the world. Whereas fighting, I think it has the potential to be equally popular around the globe.
Yeah, I agree about that. I definitely agree about that. So to me, it was an awesome chat. Would you like to add something? Maybe to say something else? Maybe you wanted to add something else to this?
No, just if people, people watching this, if they like the chat, like my stuff, I have a channel called Zees MMA, Zees MMA, and follow me on Twitter at RockstarZ, or check out my website, zeesmma.ca.
All right, I'm gonna put everything into description. You can expect video tomorrow because now I need to put it on creation. I have some boxing event, hope I'm gonna cover, but tomorrow you can expect it. We're gonna share links. I will send you a link tomorrow also for this guy.
Right on, Vlad. Good talking to you.
Have a great day.
You too, bud.